Kurt Angle easily finds himself in the conversation for one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and rightfully so, because his ability to marry this legitimate grappling badass style with this sort of cornball goofy character behind the scenes in promos was just endlessly entertaining throughout his time in WWF, and really produced some of the greatest moments and greatest matches in WWE history. And one thing that's so amazing about Kurt Angle is that he was great right off the bat. So much stock is put into Kurt Angle's rookie year, and a lot of people say that he had the single greatest rookie year in the history of pro wrestling. But personally, while I do think that's true, I think people say it for the wrong reasons, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm Isaiah Knowlton from Hot Tag Wrestling, and I'm going to tell you guys about exactly why Kurt Angle's debut year was so great. So the first thing I want to talk about are his matches, and one thing that should be noted about Kurt Angle is that, like, right out the gate, he was really, really good. He had his debut pay-per-view match and his debut match in WWF against Shawn Stasiak at Survivor Series in 1999. And I think it was a very good match. It received some chance of boring from the crowd because it was worked in a more like mat-based amateur wrestling kind of style. So I can see why, especially during the Attitude Era, they wouldn't be super into that. But right off the bat, he was able to marry his amateur background to a pro wrestling ring. And though he didn't really have the handle on the crowd or that portion of the match where he's working the crowd and building the match around their expectations, just from an in-ring perspective, he was really good off the bat. And that sort of trend continues through his first 6 months, where he's good, and he's having good matches, but there's just this little disconnect with the crowd. Like, he faced Steve Blackman at Armageddon in 1999, an alright match. Same with Taz at the Royal Rumble. It got a big pop because it's Taz's debut, and it's sort of like this really fast-paced match, and you get to watch Kurt Angle get his ass kicked, but really nothing special there. Faced Chris Jericho at No Way Out. Pretty good match. And then at WrestleMania, a triple threat match against Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. This is a match that I really expected to be better than it was because of the talent involved. But Kurt Angle being so close to his debut and Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit being so close to their transfer from WCW to WWF, it makes sense why it was like a good match, but not great, or not even like really good. But yeah, it's clear in this first 6-month period that he's really working on sort of finding his footing at being able to marry the character work perspective with the in-ring technical ability style. Because this has always been here. He was, from day one, he was always like good in the ring in terms of hitting moves. But building to those moves and getting the crowd invested in his match, that still hadn't quite gotten there yet. But it started to show soon after that. He faced Chris Benoit at Insurrection, had a really good match. He had a trios match where he was teaming with Edge and Christian against Rikishi and Too Cool at Judgment Day. Absolutely great match. The only match I would really recommend going back and watching from Kurt Angle's first year. He had some good matches at King of the Ring when he eventually went on to win it. And then after that, like an alright match with The Undertaker, alright triple threat match with The Rock and Triple H at SummerSlam. But really, I feel like his high in his first year was at the end when he won the WWF Championship from The Rock at No Mercy. That was his best singles match to that point in WWE. And not just because the in-ring action was necessarily better than anything he had done in the past, but really because he started to show his understanding of how to work the crowd to become invested into a match and how to play heel against one of the most popular and dynamic baby faces in the company. So looking back on his catalog of matches from his first year, he didn't really have a dud other than when he faced the Big Show at Backlash, but that really wasn't his fault. But other than that, no match was like really, really bad, like you would expect someone to have in their debut year. They were all consistently really, really good, but also they were consistently never great. His first year, he never really hit the in-ring peak that we associate with Kurt Angle. And maybe that's my fault for expecting that, for going back and watching with sort of the view I have of him from the SmackDown 6 era or from when he was World Heavyweight Champion in 2006 and putting those expectations onto Kurt Angle. That just didn't exist in his first year. And even though he was good right off the bat, it's really clear he still had a lot of learning to do as he continued down the road. And I think a lot of people, when they think about Kurt Angle's first year, they think he was great right out of the gate. And while that's not exactly true, he was good from his first match onward. The greatness didn't come till a few years down the line. So next, let's talk about Kurt Angle, the character. Because right off the bat, WWE made a pretty bold decision booking Kurt Angle as a heel. And not just a heel, like a really rotten kind of snotty heel who would come out and berate the audience and saying that he deserved their respect and he deserved to be cheered by them because he was their Olympic hero and he had won gold for them. And it's a unique way to introduce a character like Kurt Angle to the audience, where everything seems primed for him to come in as a babyface, but WWE choosing to debut him as a heel was such a unique and risky move, but it paid off masterfully because Kurt really sort of shined in that role. And it took him a while to really find his footing in there, because to start out, his promo skills weren't amazing. And I don't think Kurt Angle is a guy who was ever known for being like an amazing talker necessarily, but he did get better as he came along. In this first year, some of his promos really felt a little wonky. They felt a little wooden and sort of more like he was trying to remember his next line versus naturally speaking to the audience. And while that may not always be an issue when you are in an era on the same show with like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and Triple H, these all-time legendary promos, it is sort of glaring by comparison. And his character work and his promo work sort of followed the same trajectory as his matches, where they started out and they were pretty good, pretty entertaining, like fun to see on screen. I was always excited when Kurt Angle was on the screen, but never really great, never like all-time amazing material. And as he continued along his path, his ability to start displaying his character, not only like during backstage interviews, but also in the body of a match, improved phenomenally. It was an insane improvement if you watched his first match at Survivor Series to his last match at No Mercy. The ability to display the snotty heel character who could really rile up the crowd and get them behind a babyface was 1,000 times better by the end of the first year. So once again, not starting out very high, but very quickly becoming at a level that you would expect a WWE wrestler at the top of the card to be. And that's another thing that's so impressive, is that really he was at the top of the card. Like, he won the Intercontinental Championship and the European Championship within his first 6 months there, and by the end of his first year, he was WWF champion. And though I don't ever really think he was booked like a main event guy, because he was a lot of times taking losses to like the Big Show and the Undertaker and Triple H, and pretty decisive, convincing losses. He was immediately pushed to the top to be in the conversation with those guys, and he was immediately sort of put in as this staple of WWF and this fixture in the scenery of it, and to the point where you couldn't imagine WWF without Kurt Angle. And that's just in his first year, and that is partially credit to the booking for putting him there, but also credit to Kurt Angle for rising to that level. So my overall thoughts on Kurt Angle's first year is that right out the bat, he was at a level that would take most people a decade to reach in the same position. And he was naturally very good in the ring and able to display a character really well. But he wasn't great right out the bat. And I think that a lot of people sort of assign Kurt Angle the position that he would eventually get to in his career right from his first match, saying he's one of the greatest of all time, one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, this badass who just has this aura of awesomeness around him, but can also be this sort of goofy heel character. People think that's what he had when he first debuted, and it's really not. It took him a while to get there, and I would say even by the end of his first year, he wasn't really to that level yet, to the level that Kurt Angle would eventually reach. But that's not to discredit him, because by the end of his first year, I think he was easily better than like 80-90% of the roster at the time, having big matches, incorporating a unique character into his matches, cutting, like pretty good promos. But I personally put Kurt Angle on my Mount Rushmore of greatest wrestlers of all time. And the thing that really turned Kurt around, and the aspect of his career that really put him into that position in my mind, was his run with the SmackDown 6 in 2002. And if you think about it, that's only 3 years after debuting, less than 3 years. And for him to go in the span of 3 years and become the best wrestler in WWE, and I do feel that in 2002, Kurt Angle was the best wrestler in WWE, bar none. That's the feat I think we should be talking about. Not that his debut year, he went from debuting to being great, to being an all-timer, to immediately being the wrestler we would expect him to, but over the course of less than 3 years, transforming to this guy who was having 5-minute matches, the crowd was chanting boring at him, he wasn't great on promos, he didn't really know how to display his character in the ring, even though he had a very entertaining technical style. To go from there at Survivor Series 1999 to what he was doing in 2002, great matches every pay-per-view, great promos, funny but also really intense promos, and creating these great stories alongside Chris Benoit, and facing Edge and Rey Mysterio, and facing the Guerreros, and eventually in 2003 with Brock Lesnar. Being able to display that kind of excellence in that short of a period of a time is ridiculous. It's absolutely insane how quickly he became the best wrestler in WWE. And though it didn't happen in a year, he was able to do it in 3. And that's what I think of Kurt Angle's debut year. Very, very good, but not great. But don't worry, the greatness would come. That's my opinion, though. Other people may disagree with me. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Was Kurt Angle's year better than I gave it credit for? Is it the best rookie year of all time? Let me know what you think down below. I've been Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to see more content in the future, because it really does help me out. I'll be coming out with more Kurt Angle content in the future, because I'm currently going through and watching his catalog of matches, both in WWE and TNA, and I'm going to be releasing a video about every must-see Kurt Angle match, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.